but I'm practicing dry-ish January, which means I'm not drinking at least 1 or 2 days a week. Um, yeah, Lisa's down to that. But all kidding aside, I mean, we joke about this at the store. I do most of my whiskey drinking in these virtual tastings. Outside of this, I don't really do a ton because, uh,
It's a lot.
it is a lot. I mean, most days I get home, if I want something, maybe it's a beer. That's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. I go to the gin and tonic if I need something.
Very medicinal,
Very,
medicinal
yes.
roots to that for sure.
Wine with
Um,
dinner. That's my move.
Lee's got the wine. I cracked a bottle of wine for dinner the other night because I had a nice steak that I cooked up. So just
Mm.
prove people wrong that I do drink wine every once in a while. I think the biggest thing for me is that like my wife drinks white. If I'm going to drink wine, I'm going to drink red, and I'm probably not going to have more than a glass or two of it. So I
Yeah.
think that's the main reason why. And Lee, you've been in the wine and spirits business for 25-ish years, I'm guessing. A little longer than I
Yep.
have, not much, but a little longer. I mean, how many decent wines are in half-size bottles?
Oh God, it's a minefield too. Like there are some that come out, but they don't last. They're
Mhm.
like they'll age prematurely. It's always a crapshoot if you're buying a split.
Yeah.
Um, my my grandmother-in-law is blind, like functionally blind, and she told me, excuse me, that she loved a particular bottle of wine. And she's like 90 something. And so I got her some of that wine. And then I got her a can of that nitrogen spray so that she can have a glass of wine a day. But I had to be, the reason I bring up that she's blind is I had to say, like, I'm not trying to trick an old lady here. There actually is something in this canister. It feels
Yeah.
it feels like it's empty, but trust me, spray it into that bottle and it'll last you for the week because she wants a glass, with dinner.
Yeah.
So
You
a
don't want
big
grandma
advocate for
to,
the nitrogen.
you don't want granny drinking a terrible oxidized bottle of wine.
No, no, she
I mean,
deserves more. Worked hard.
she's blind. She has a palate. Like,
Yeah.
I
Lee,
don't think
you
she's been
don't,
blind enough long enough to be like a hyper taster, but yes.
yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know if we need to delve into whether your grandma has heightened her other senses, but
Yeah.
regardless, glad that she's enjoying a glass of wine. All right. Well, we're all assembled here, and I appreciate you, everyone who's logged in. There'll hopefully be a few stragglers for our Old Malt Cask 25th anniversary tasting. We've got a pretty cool range for you here. As we do that whole captive audience thing, remind people about some things that are coming up. Most of our virtual events that we have online are sold out or close to it. We do have, for those in Calgary or willing to travel, the MS Calgary Whiskey Festival, which is next Thursday. Tickets are on sale. I'll have another email blast out about that. The product list this year is crazy. It's almost 350 products long, which has got to be the biggest one we've ever had. So pretty happy about that. We do have a few events coming up as well in store, like our Burns Bash, which came about when the AGLC told us we couldn't do classy Burns dinners with pipers and dancers and things because we were taking business away from restaurants, even though we were buying them out. So instead, we have a less classy, try as many whiskeys as you can, 2 hours event at the store. Somehow, though, I've come to this conclusion that I think Robbie Burns would appreciate it. He would appreciate the basic frugality and efficiency of the event. So that's what we do instead of a Burns dinner. But Blinded by Bourbon, Evan and Harmony have a bourbon tasting coming up. There's kits ready for that. Just scrolling down, Lost in Translation, a handful of kits left. And we've got what's really cool is a bottling of Chichibu in there, which I don't think poured in a tasting in a decade. We've got the Nika 90th anniversary and another bottling from a Churros malt, which is quite cool. Ardbeg sold out. Bowmore sold out. I think most of them are sold out. The reason I brought those out those tomorrow or Thursday, we're going to be putting a bunch of new tastings online. There's a Macallan tasting with the Space Donut from Hell bottle, and some other things to celebrate 200 years of Macallan. Harmony, what else to show you today? We've got there's a
Oh,
Edward.
we have a whiskey sponge and whiskey land.
That's right.
I'm very
The
excited
end of
about
whiskey
these.
sponge, the final whiskey sponge tasting ever.
Yes.
Whiskey Land, which has got a Springbank in it, 26-year-old Springbank. Edward to the Extreme is
Yeah.
going to be coming out. And there was at least one other, I think a Symington's, signatory Symington's tasting.
That's right.
So lots of cool things to look forward to. But we're going to get rolling here. Lee, before we roll into this, you and I have both known this brand. I think this was one of the first independent bottlers available in Alberta. Like Murray McDavid was really early, but I think certainly by the early 2000s, Old Malt Cask was in the market. And we don't need to talk about the history of who ran that brand and all that. You and I can joke about that on the side. But this was back before the Laings had their feud. And by the Laings, we mean the brothers, Fred and Stewart. It was one united clan of whiskey, but then it wasn't.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, being close to them and rub shoulders with the Douglas Laing side of that, they're all great people, really, really good people. What I've seen more than anything, it was actually the kind of the third generation coming up that were driving some of that feud. The children of Freddie
Scott,
and
Andrew, and
and
Kara.
Stewart.
Yeah.
What's that?
Scott, Andrew, and Kara, right?
Yes, yes. So that's kind of where I saw it. They had different ideas about how things were going to go, and I should say, it was born that of that feud that I was able to get involved, and that was on advice from you, from Whiskey Intelligence article that you had read, and I smelled blood in the water, and that's how I was able to get associated. We brought in the first edition.
Lee, we can all agree that the brand was not well represented at that time in Alberta, and there was opportunity for change. And
Yes, the number of clients that I had, because I started with the first edition line, and the number of clients I had that were like, "Hey, can you just take this over? This old boat, we really want to work with it." I'm like, I'll do what I can do." And here we are now. So it all worked out. But yes, it was interesting times, and this has been around. I had the good fortune of being with Murray McDavid before the Brook-Laddie launch. So that's kind of where I've worked with lots of different whiskeys over the years, but to have your introduction as a professional out there, working with an independent bottler and working with Murray McDavid that took chances and had interesting bottlings, that was a pretty cool introduction. And now it's time to get serious, because Old Malt Cask was a much more reserved presentation and more reverent, let's call it, for the whiskeys that they selected.
well, and I mean, for the longest time, I mean, when you look back, because you've been an agent, you were also a retailer. When you look back in the mid 2000s, Old Malt Cask, Provenance, there were all these bottlings of Port Ellen out, like 20, 21, 22, like up into the mid 20s. The company got its start as a blender, as a lot of them do. But it was with Old Malt Cask that they sort of jumped into the single malt market and becoming an independent bottler. And I mean, obviously that would have been, if we do the math, what, 1998? Oh, sorry, no, 88. Or is it 98?
No, 98.
98.
Yeah, 98.
Right. I'm confusing my Old Malt Cask with my signatory there for a brief moment. So 1998, they saw where the market was going. And when I got into the business, I mean, there was maybe 30, 40 distilleries that had bottlings. Most of them didn't. And other than that, you would get cool things from Murray McDavid, Old Malt Cask, Provenance. There were not a lot of, and Gordon MacPhail, there was not a lot of other players out there at that time. And I remember those really old school bottles. And for those who've maybe seen some of this release or the 20th that came out 5 years ago, one of the cool things they did was they put them in these retro bottles and boxes that were like, not the same, but like the ones they had, inspired by, I think would be the term, the ones they had when they were available in the early 2000s.
Updated, certainly and some rules changed too. What the size of the font is regulated per the name of the independent bottler and the name of the distillery, and that actually changed where it had to be bigger. And so they updated their packaging. They put a little color coding in there, which I like about the modern stuff. But the green bottles, the having to pick up the bottle and read instead of just going, that's this, that's this, that's this. And I'm like, get it in your hands, look at it, buy it so that you can know what the color is. It's just bolt.
Yeah. Well, I we should get into the whiskeys. I could tell you a story about color and the glass coloring and things like that, but we won't go there just now. Let's start with the Tomintoul. So this is 17-year-old Tomintoul, distilled 2006. The Old Malt Cask line, for the most part, there's been exceptions, including a KWM Port Ellen cask we did back in the day that was at cask strength. But typically they're diluting to 50%, which has to be said as a decent bottling strength. I've always been happy with that. From a refill sherry butt, originally filled in 2006. So yeah, this is our first dram of the night. And I guess we don't need to leave that up there for too long because there's, as you said, there's nothing to look at. There's no color. We're relying purely on the whiskey standing on its nose, taste, and palate. Yeah, quite fruity.
A note on the 50%.
Yeah.
The 50% bottlings, that's what you'll see year in and year out from every major release of Old Malt Cask. And there's only two exceptions. And that the first exception is my favorite, when a person buys the whole barrel, Kensington Wine Market, West Coast Whiskey Society, whatever it is, and they decide that they want to have it at cask strength. Well, when you buy the whole barrel, you get what you want. I love that. So that's when you'll see it in it with somebody else's logo on it or whatever. The other way, and this is almost as cool, is if it is already dropped below 50% naturally. So that's a cask strength issue. And think about that mad race between 10% and 40% and that risk that's being taken with the surface area of a rapidly evaporating cask at that point. Those bottlings are always good.
Mm-hmm.
Always good. They're very concentrated, really, really great to try.
I mean, the only thing I would say to that, Lee, is I think we're probably not seeing as many of those as we used to, because if they had something like that, it would probably be in the old and rare line now. Whereas even 5, 6, 7 years ago, we would frequently see things 30 plus years of age bottled under Old Malt Cask. Now, rare that we see anything north of like mid-20s.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I will say I get probably one a year that is below 50% in the Old Malt Cask range. That's pretty much it.
So I'm loving the nose on this. It's got some like I don't know, it reminds me of like French crepes, some powdered sugar, lemon juice. It's got a nice fruitiness to it. It's soft. Harmony, what are you getting on this one on the nose?
It's kind of, for me, tons and tons of soft fruits. It's got like a sweet malty thing happening. Kind of smells juicy, like the fruit juice from a fruit cup. Like you said, it kind of hits those pears and cherry, and the palate for me was just like beautiful, like fruit and chocolate. It's got a nice dryness. It's creamy. And then reminded me of those like Walter's shortbread cookies a little bit on the finish.
Or Walker's.
Oh, the Walkers, yeah.
You're just, I mean, Walter the dog should have a shortbread
He's
brand
just
named after him.
in my heart today, you know.
He just has to settle for whiskey. He gets whiskeys named after him. Yeah, the palate, you know, one of the notes I saw in there that it was a really good one was the orange Pez candy note. Was a really good one. The nose and palate to me on this, it's very light, very fresh, very delicate. You know, probably good that this was in a refill cask, because it could have gotten, you know, washed out very, very easily. The nose and palate match nicely to me. There's that nice citrus tone. It's decadent. There's some nice like powdered sugar notes in there. And it just reminds me of like waffles and French crepes. It's just got this nice doughy bakery note. Lee, you got anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I will actually follow up on the crepe note, and for me, it's the cooked grain that you would get with crepes, that flour that has been cooked on the skillet. Terry's chocolate orange
Mhm.
show up for me, and I get that from refill. It's a delicate dance with Tomintoul being quote unquote the gentle dram that we wouldn't want it to get too overpowered at 17 years old. And I would like to answer Tom's question in the note. I'm
No,
the
no, Lee, I
importer
have
of
to
this
answer it. You can't answer it for your, no, I'm just kidding.
whiskey.
So Lee is works with Select Wines. They're the importer for Hunter Laing products in at least Western Canada. Do you have more than that, or
All what?
all of Canada?
Canada
So
what?
all of Canada. So that includes things like Ardnahoe. And Lee, I know this is a segue that we're going off, but like when that new release is coming out soon, isn't it?
Yeah, the Infinite Lock will be here in March.
Okay.
Ooh,
Uh,
cool name.
But yeah, so Lee's the importer, but he's been with other import companies in the past. Been with Select for quite a while now, including he had his own for quite some time. But he's also been on the retail side of things, selling whiskey as well as selling it to retailers. So
It's like semi-retirement.
yeah, but yeah, Lee, well, I've been in the business now 21 plus years, so I've known Lee 21 years essentially, because there's been
Yeah, for sure. We've
paths
rubbing shoulders for a
crossing
long
that
time.
whole period of time. I'm going to just throw this quickly up on stage because I mean, I think this is a beautiful Tomintoul, and I have to say it's a distillery I don't get excited about very often. But this is from Whiskey Fun, couple months back, I think, yeah, November. 90-point score from Surge, which is a pretty decent score. And I think it was one of, if not the top-rated Tomintoul. The distillery bottlings, as you can see there, didn't do too well, which
A little soft.
unfortunately holds. But this is a lovely place to start. Very orangey,
Mhm.
lots of nice bakery tones there. Fruity, not maybe not tropical, but it's got a beautiful profile to it.
Yeah,
Great
that's
starting drink.
gorgeous.
And I don't know if there's anything to say about Tomintoul. I believe it's the highest distillery in Scotland. It might be.
Second highest.
Is it Dalwhinnie that's higher? One of those.
Dalwhinnie and Ben Nevis compete for the highest.
Well, I don't think Ben
Ben
Nevis.
Nevis is actually just the highest mountain, but his
Yeah.
Dalwhinnie is the highest distillery, and Tomintoul would be the second.
There you
Kind
go.
of a Johnny come lately, 1964. Created by White and Mackay to add more volume to their blends.
Mhm.
I learned, having worked with these guys in the past, they're real honest, straight up whiskey people that were a pleasure to work with. So I was happy to jump on this anniversary bottling when it came time to choose. There were 25, I think,
Mhm.
different bottlings, and when these lists come out, they get emailed first thing in the morning, Scotland time, which is 5 o'clock our time.
Yeah.
So by the 5 o'clock out for the day, excuse me, I'm sending a note the next day saying, "Hey, can I get this? Can I get that?" Ain't no Germany bought all this. Ain't no Red Mile bought all that. So I was happy that there was some Tomintoul left for me to grab.
They got it. That is not kosher. There should be quotas for parts of the world that are not doing business with them contemporaneously. So
I do have to say, I'm not about to complain in that Canada does get a really healthy allocation.
all right,
And of especially when the Ardenhoe came out, Canada got more than most places. So
well,
they're great. We won't complain.
we'll take that. We'll take that. There was a few of those old, as you know, because I emailed you, of the older ones that I was a little jealous we didn't get, but next time, maybe they'll do us a solid next time.
We'll still be doing this when they're 50.
All right, let's move on to the Inchgower. Inchgower is a distillery, I mean, even more so than Tomintoul, that it's just not something I often get excited about. Built by Diageo or owned by Diageo, one of their workhorse distilleries. It's along the coast, just outside of the Speyside region. And I find it's often got this salty, kind of meaty profile to it. But It does mellow with age. We've had an Inchgower, well, we have an Inchgower cask in the shop that's lovely. I do find that it is a distillery that definitely benefits from sherry. So this is a 15-year-old sherry butt, originally filled 2008, bottled as is tradition at 50%. Lee, you seem to have some facts prepared for us. Do you have facts for Inchgower as well?
Inchgower is the only distillery that has ever been owned by a town council.
Oh,
Cool.
Purchased, yeah, pretty neat. Purchased during the Depression, the town council of Bucky, when the things were going south, but they needed that to keep running, and they got it through the Depression, and then sold it to Arthur Bell and Sons for a very tidy profit.
yeah.
And it continues to be a part of the Bell's blend over under the stewardship of Diageo. I've always liked them because it doesn't get more independently bottled than Inchgowers. You know, you don't see distillery offerings too often, and to have a behind the scenes player is pretty fun.
Other rando fact is just down the coast from Bucky is the town of Cullen, named for which the famous Cullen skink soup is named for. So essentially Scottish chowder would be the best way to describe that to people. The original chowder.
Wow, that's a fact.
That is, no, because I've driven through there, and when I was there, I felt compelled to have a bowl of Cullen skink soup to see if it was better there than anywhere else. And
And
I
how was
can't
it?
say that it was, but still,
Very
when in
cool.
Rome.
That's
Uh,
right. I love the nose on this. It for me, right off the bat, it was like strawberry and banana, like marshmallow candies.
mhm.
Um, and it has like a nice creaminess to it.
Oh
Yeah, I get a
man.
real rum quality to it on the finish, like a dimmer sugar burnt ends kind of quality to it as well.
There's definitely like a caramelized sugar and especially on the palate. To me,
Yeah.
this is all white fruit. It's apples and pears, like candy apple, poached pears. Um, I was even getting like a little bit of like applesauce on the nose.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
palate, it's lush, it's honeyed. Um,
Mhm.
the sherry's giving you a little bit of chocolate and spice, but it's not over the top. It's got a nice balance to it. And probably doesn't hurt that they bottled this at 50%. I mean, I think this could have been a little rough and ready if it had been bottled at full on cast strength.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
like too hot because I'm certainly getting that warmth, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, Lee, I've always had this theory about legacy distilleries like Inchgower, which have been run the way they've been run for decades. And it's that they don't often have as clean or pure a middle cut as a lot of the newer distilleries do, or the ones that have really taken that to heart. And what they're really relying on is time. You need time in the cask for the more volatile elements in the spirit to burn off and round out. And I think for me, Inchgower is one of those distilleries. Like, I have never had an Inchgower under like 10, 12 years of age that I felt was drinkable. Um, and but I mean, this is lovely. This is a nice palate to it. It's sherried but balanced. It's not over the top. Um, it's got a little bit of that meatiness, but it's not too much. It's a nice balance.
It's
Yeah,
really
I
nice.
would agree. When you're built to be part of a blend, I'm not going to say they don't take care and attention. Of course they do. But if your part of that recipe is to be
Mhm.
heat and meaty, and that's what you make. But I think that this has definitely benefited from that sherry cask. Part of the fun part of working with an independently bottled Inchgower, not all the IBs do this, but we bring our own barrels. So
Mhm.
the idea of seeing this barrel and going, this would be neat with an Inchgower, and they've got an idea, the boring part of every job, they put it on a spreadsheet and go, let's check in on this in 15 years. And they have that idea from the get-go when they drop that barrel off, that it's going to require X amount of time with this distillery or that distillery. And if it's a point of differentiation from what Inchgower is already doing, all the better. And I think this one strikes a real balance with that meatiness. Agreed, they're downright foxy, horsey, below 12 years of age, especially with that heat. But I think this one's really straddling the line nicely.
Harmony?
I was just writing in the chat that this would not be a very good dryish January bottle for me because I like it very much and I would drink it often and a lot.
It's very drinkable. It is very, very drinkable, but
Yeah.
it's got a little bit of a rough side to it, which I like. I mean, it's not
It,
too polished.
there's like a hint of a medicinal something. I can't place exactly what it is. It's like immediately after I swallow, it's like right at the front of the finish and it dissipates. And I just like, I couldn't figure out if it was like a fisherman's friend note or some sort of super cold cough drop type thing, but there's something in there that cuts through all that like beautiful fruit. Menthol herbs. Yeah, maybe it's menthol, but it definitely kind of uh offers you a little something different right at the finish. Yeah.
I was just
I
going to
like
say,
it. It has moved forward in my lineup of empty bottles. Yeah.
there you go. I was going to quickly consult somewhere else just to see if there was, you know, yeah, and it says here that fermentation is short, steeply angled line arms help to capture the weightier elements, and underlying waxiness flashes similar to another coastal plant, Clynelish. So interesting. I don't find this super Clynlishy, but I can sort of see that where they're coming from on that waxy note. This would be more like Benrinnes meets Clynelish, where you've got a little bit of that sort of barnyardy side of things added to that little bit of a waxy note. But nice whiskey. You know, distillery we don't see a ton of. As Lee said, only from independent bottlers. Diageo has their Flora and Fauna release. Outside of that, like they've done maybe 2 or 3 annual releases of it, and that's it. The one place you might see it is, Lee, and I don't know if you see these, but I kind of laugh when I see them now because I can't imagine how much people are paying for them. But Diageo has their casks of distinction, which you can only buy if you're like an uber rich guy, because I think even an Inchgower 25-year-old cask of distinction is probably $1,500 a bottle, which is obscene. But yeah, you don't see that whiskey out there very often, and so it's nice to see a couple of good ones. Harmony, we've got a nice cask in the shop, and there's this as well. They're both pretty decent. Let's move on to Speyburn. Speyburn is a distillery that we have official bottlings of in store, although they're relatively recent. I think it's fair to say opinions on those are mixed, although I actually think they're pretty good for the price. I think they offer decent value. This one is a 2005 vintage, bottled after 17 years in an Oloroso sherry, but 50%. So let's see what we think about the Speyburn. And I think, Lee, correct me, yeah, this is one of the ones that we took as an exclusive for the shop.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is one of the ones that I'm most excited to try tonight. I do like Speyburn. The distillery offerings a little soft, but palatable. Very, very palatable. There's other distillery offerings that I could rally against and say, why are you doing this? But I have found price tag wise, the distillery offerings have been nice. I've particularly enjoyed this one. That color right out of the gate really grabs you. You definitely see that Oloroso influence, a real kind of coffee cream note to it. And I love the history of these places. The distillery was built in 1897, and they didn't have windows in the building yet when a snowstorm came in. And there's a really old picture of guys in fur coats getting a cask done, getting a cask filled so that they could get 1897 on the stamp to commemorate Queen Victoria's anniversary. So these guys worked really, really hard. They had built the distillery out of stones from the River Spey, but didn't have the glass yet for the windows. So it's like a really, really neat picture.
I so I mean, it's a great story and very charming. It's funny in retrospect to look back at it because like those years, like 1897 to 1899, people were falling all over themselves to open distilleries, and then
It's
most of them closed in 1901 because there was too many.
Pattison crash. Yeah.
And I mean, don't want to be the the Chicken Little here, but I mean, there's parallels to where we find ourselves today. I mean, 45-ish new distilleries are either opened or under construction in Scotland as of the last 10 years. And 2 years ago in Scotland, they laid 8 times as much spirit into oak as was bottled. And yeah, we're headed towards interesting times, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Nobody wants to say the word glut. And keep in mind that mad dash in the late 1800s, that was to supply the blended whiskey trade. And what we have happening now is guys going, we're going to be pimped right from the get-go and be single malt badasses.
Yeah.
That's going to, pardon the
we're gonna
pun, but it's going to dilute the industry.
Yeah.
But
Can't all be badasses.
It's a little
Everybody
bit like,
thinks they're elite luxury badasses out of the gate. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, Harmony, I remember, I won't mention which, but one of the new distilleries, which is at a high-ish price point,
Mhm.
I said, okay, your first release did okay, but the next one's got to be cheaper because I don't think people will keep paying these prices. And they said, oh, but we're a premium brand. I was like, great, but the consumer gets
Because
it.
you say so.
Yeah. Don't we get to decide what's premium?
Yeah. So anyway,
It just frightens me when I hear stuff like that because they're going to be the same people that are going to be at a trade show, dressed to the nines, over cologned, over perfumed, trying to push their products, and offering you free stuff, and maybe, oh, we're going to mix it in a cocktail, and here, have an oyster while you're here, and we're premium. And meanwhile, like, nobody tasted anything. You don't remember the whiskey at all.
it's called
Yeah.
showmanship. So anyway,
All smoke, no roast.
so there's been some comments here. The sherry notes on this one are interesting. It's got a bit more kind of punch to it than the other two. So it
Yeah.
seems like a bit more of a sherry forward cask. Some nice chocolate tones. Some of that like classic Christmas cake on the nose.
It's kind of acidic at the same time,
Mm.
I find. It's huge
That-
sherry for me.
But I think that's often the case when sherry's really big. I mean, this is new school sherry. I think it's very good new school sherry. Like this actually reminds me a lot of our Glentalker's cask. Like this is not
Yeah.
quite big and rich or deep, but it's
Yeah.
going in the direction of that 2000 Glentalker's cask.
Yeah.
This is just a very good bottling of new school sherry.
Yeah. I got
What do you think of the smoke level in other Speyburns that you've tried versus this one? I'm not getting
I
really
haven't really recognized them for
any-
smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, me either, but they do lightly peated runs.
Do
Yeah.
they? Well, I feel like if they had done such a thing with this bottle, that the sherry cask has really tampered it.
Or tamped it down, I think you mean.
Sure, I get no smoke.
Yeah, I don't think there's any smoke on there. If there is, it's just from like toasting of the sherry casks when they're producing them. Because I don't personally find, I mean, it's possible that they've got a very low phenol, like 1-2%. There are a handful of distilleries that'll do that. But if it's there, it's literally just a tiny piece of the puzzle. Because to me, this is just chocolatey, Christmas cakey sherry.
Yeah, I don't get any smoke at all either, but I have been kind of curveballed by a little smoke here and there, so kind of throw it out
Yeah.
there.
Lee, I saw your little exchange there. Is there no prospect of Ardnahoe Society bottles coming to Canada? Could we
So
establish an embassy? It wouldn't be the first time.
that is something that is this is not the first time I've had this question. Today the answer is no. talk to me again next week. This ties right into what I was saying about the Canadian wine when we were offline there. Is it's ironic that they're going to give Sammy, Travis, people on this call an opportunity to join their society and buy bottles exclusively for them, and yet the guy that spends $250,000 a year on product of theirs, no
Yeah.
go.
What Lee's alluding to is the fact that legally today, for the first time, wineries can ship wine to Alberta from BC. But then they cut out the retailer and the middleman, and the frustrations being, especially as a retailer, that I might pay more in wholesale than you would as a retail consumer buying it direct, which then raises the question, why should we carry that wine at all? If that's the way that business is going to be done. So, but anyway,
So if I can get it at a good price, then I definitely will. But if it ends up being exorbitant and there's no deals, I mean, I'm dealing with Scots. There's always a way to get a deal. But we'll see.
maybe in a year's time, they'll be more motivated to
Yes.
find
Yes.
new markets or expand existing ones. Why don't we move on to Fettercairn, the only whiskey in tonight's tasting whose emblem is the same as Scotland's national animal.
And the oldest corporate use of that symbol.
Did you know that? Did you know about that one, Lee? The unicorn?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Is that great?
such a good one. I mean, as good as that is, it's far more interesting that Scotland is one of the few nations in the world that's chosen a fictional creature as its national animal. I don't know, it explains a lot, I think, when you think about it.
Unless they know something we don't.
Well, I'm bound to get into trouble here. We don't need to comment on the feelings of, I'm not even gonna go down this road because
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'll get myself in some trouble. Fettercairn, probably fair to say it's the third most important distillery in the White and Mackay portfolio. They did rebrand it last year because it celebrated, like Macallan, its 200th anniversary. One of the interesting things about it is it was owned by one of Britain's prime ministers, William Gladstone, who had laws changed that made bottling of whiskey legal because it was in his interest to be able to do this. The bizarre thing is that prior to, I think it was about the 1860s, you could sell whiskey, but only if people brought their own vessel, or you could sell them a cask. But like you couldn't bottle things and have them on a shelf and let people buy them. That wasn't legal until about the 1860s. And it was because of Gladstone, because he had a stake in the Fettercairn distillery.
They were the second owners. And the first guy, it's like a golf course. First guy lost his shirt. Another big change is they changed on when the taxes got applied. The taxes on the alcohol produced originally were out of the still. So you're getting taxed at 65, 70% ABV. But then they changed that to be what it was at bottling strength, and that was the taxes. That really opened the whiskey industry up to be a growing concern that you could get to market.
You didn't have to pay the taxes until it was bottled.
Right.
And that allowed companies to lay things down, grow their business. So a lot of things happened. Gladstone, from what I understand, was a fairly popular British prime minister, but I love how, that little touch of corruption, that was the 1800s for you. Everybody had to have their own little side deal. So I don't think I've popped this one up on the screen yet, have I? Shared the details? If not, so what is this? This is from an ex-wine hogshead, 15 years old, 2008 vintage. Lee, well, you've known me long enough. Oh, he's off camera for a bit here. Harmony knows this, although I think she's sort of on the same page as me. We get a little nervous around wine casks at Kensington Wine Market. I think
We do.
we've discussed t-shirt ideas over the years, and wine cask skeptic, I think, has frequently come up as a t-shirt idea for us, or
What are they hiding?
wine cask curious, not fully willing to commit, but willing to give it a try. Lee?
And I'm glad I did because I enjoyed this one when Lee shared it with me.
It was a bold move to do it for your anniversary. You know, I'll
Oh,
see
for sure.
one or two wine casks a year, and in this anniversary launch, I saw 4 or 5.
Mhm.
Um, you know, having worked with Murray McDavid and their acronym, the ACE, the additional cask enhancement, you know, that worked really well with some of those bottlings.
Some of
I
them.
haven't seen them swing and miss
Yeah.
with wine cask, but I absolutely agree. It is dubious, and it feels like necessary. For me, a finish always carries a bit of intrigue. Like, okay, are they hiding something? Were they taking something away? When it comes to wine cask matured, I think something that a lot of people miss is now we're not talking about Spanish or American oak. Often we'll be talking about French oak or Slovenian oak, or there'll be a different kind of spice to the recipe outside of what the wine that was in that cask did. So they're always worth a look. See, I don't turn them down, but I am dubious when I do see them, especially if they're celebrated, where they'll say Petrus or they'll actually name the wine. It's like that seems like a bit of a reach. I like the way this has been wine hogshead. Let your mouth judge.
Mhm.
A lot of it, I think we've come to respect. And I mean, Lee, I've told you before. I mean, you might remember about 3 or 4 years ago, we bottled a Mortlach cask that was from uh, Hunter Laing. It was from an ex-wine cask. And I remember before I even tried it, I was like, come on, Lee, you know I'm not going to buy it.
I did it on purpose. Yes, I do remember.
And I did have to eat my words on that. We did select and bottle that cask. I never thought we would bottle a wine cask matured whiskey, but I think part of it comes to is how are they treated? And the fact that you brought up Murray McDavid and the acing earlier, for me is an opportunity to touch on this because they did some dreadful finishing. And it was because they were leaving wine in the cask, putting the whiskey in, and then it was coming out 2 weeks later. And I don't know if you remember, there was a controversy because one of their whiskeys came out and it was very pink. And they got
The 20-year-old.
yeah, they got
Brooklighty
chastised
20-year-old.
online where people were suggesting, and keep in mind, this is just what was said, that they were making whiskey for gays, which is a horrible thing to say.
That wasn't people. That was journalists. That was reported
Yeah,
in a
no, people
magazine
were,
exactly like you said that.
but it was, I mean, the criticism that they made was wrong, flat out.
Yeah,
Some of those finishings they did were dreadful. I mean, I remember an Ardbeg 16 they bottled that was finished in an Amarone cask, and like they ruined a 16-year-old Ardbeg by putting this wet Amarone cask on top of it.
Agreed. They beat the shit out of it. That was
And
terrible.
I think, I don't know what Hunter Lang's policy is. I don't know how they're doing it, but my suspicion is they're probably rinsing the cask, which I think at the very least is a bare minimum. Because if you're
Mhm.
putting the whiskey right in after the wine, there's an opportunity for things to go bad. Either you're just absorbing the wine, or you're the cask goes off somewhere in the middle, and then you still
Bacterially, it's a risk. Yeah, bacterially, you've got oxidized wine that's left in there. You're not pulling it out of the pores and bringing some of that great French oak wood juice out of it. One of the best that I had in that ACE program was a Kleinlich Couillon Viognier cask.
Hmm.
This is that tropical angle added
Mhm.
to some of the beautiful roundness of Kleinlich. Um, so that was a success, but I agree there were definitely some swings and misses.
Yeah. Harmony, thoughts on this one?
I love this one.
Mhm.
It feels so good on the palate. I got like chocolate and vanilla, tons of fruits and apples. I love the like hints of spice that come
Mhm.
through. I just think it feels good. It drinks really
Yeah.
well.
It's rounded nicely. Fettercairn, when it's youngish, so under 15 years of age, I find can often be kind of hot. And I think you
Mhm.
can see like faint traces of this, but it's worked itself out nicely. Quite malty, chocolatey, and like you
Mhm.
said, there's some nice apple, pear, citrus tones. It's got a nice profile to it.
I like a nice little sandalwood texture too on the palate. A little
Will
bit of
saying
grit there.
best mouthfeel so far, it's luxurious, and then
Hmm
Harmony, this unicorn wears a tuxedo, just classing it up. Yeah, it's a nice bottling. And I mean, Lee, as you said, like wine cask for your 25th anniversary, but it's a good bottling. And to be fair, this is not like 10, 15 years ago. They don't just have Port Ellen and Old Caol Ila and other kinds of ridiculous things, Glenary Royal, St. Magdalene lying around. I mean, a lot of those things have long since been bottled.
Yeah, they're not immune to somebody showing up with a dump truck full of money, that's for sure.
Or they're 40 years of age or more, and then they're accordingly rare and expensive.
Hmm.
Yeah, nice dram. We should keep this rolling and move on to the Blair Athol.
Yes.
Do love me some Blair Athol. 18 years of age. This is another ex-wine hogshead from what year? 2004. I'll put it up on screen here. Lee's off on the corner, I believe, doing some parenting. Give him a second.
I love these at-home tastings. I'm cooking for a kid at the same time. So when one of my daughters is getting home from dance right away, so she'll have a piping hot meal ready to go.
There you go.
I'm all done. I'm here. I'm yours.
Wonderful fathering there, Lee. We're very appreciative of it. So what do we get on this one? It's quite creamy. Sort of like reminds me of like caramel, like a homemade caramel bar.
I dropped the lid of this one, so I'm gonna have to drink it all now.
Uh-oh.
Great pinky. Like you can definitely see some red tones in there.
Well, you're right. It does have a little bit of a pinky hue to it. So a little bit
And
leather.
if this was being marketed to gay people, that's okay. I have friends that are gay and they would love this.
But we can't stereotype based on that though. I mean,
No.
it's kind of like how back in the day, everyone thought peated whiskeys were more manly. And then, I mean, how many times have I seen a couple come in for whiskey and like the wife likes the peated stuff and the husband can't handle it. So
we've been at this a while. You nailed it.
yeah.
It used to be complete sausage party all the time and only dudes. And then women started coming in, which was great. And then I started noticing that not only were more women attending tastings, they were jumping both feet in to really smoky whiskey well before their husbands had acquired the taste. It's really, really interesting.
Well, it's even my daughter Chloe. Like I remember she called me. She was so excited. He was working down at Andrew Hilton in Lethbridge, and an Ardbeg rep came in, and she called me because she didn't think she liked Scotch. She's like, "Oh my God, Dad, I just tried Ardbeg. I like Scotch." So it was a pretty proud moment.
I bet. I'm like tearing up just listening to it. I can't wait. Maybe one of my kids will do that. I doubt it, but maybe.
The nose on this and the palate, fairly similar. I like the richness on the palate. There's lots of nice spices, very chocolatey. Both of them have this like chocolate dipped strawberry, raspberry notes, maybe even like those acai berries, which I believe are healthy even when dipped in chocolate. I haven't buy them. Harmony, you're muted. So whatever.
I was saying that you're correct. They are healthy. And if you get the blueberry ones, you get extra antioxidants. So
yeah. And the fact that they're coated in chocolate is you don't have to worry about that. It just balances itself out.
just helps the medicine go down.
It does help the medicine go down.
Blair Athol's long been a darling of independent bottlers. And kind of a fun history, a little illicit distillation going on before the 1823 Excise Act. First written notice of it is in 1798. And if you think that a lot of people could neither read nor write back then for it to show up, then we have to believe it had been illicit for some time before those original writings. And incidentally, one of the nicest stops in Pitlochry. Beautiful place to go.
Yeah, I've walked past the distillery more times than I can count, but I've never gone in because I never had a compelling reason to go there. Like it's not like I was getting the distillery bottlings I was only ever getting independents. And if I was in Pitlochry, I was usually going to see Edward Signatory, which is up the hill.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, after dinner, when I'm walking off my drams before bed, I'd usually wander down the street, under the train bridge, and down to the
Nice.
distillery. And it's a beautiful distillery, old stone buildings, home of Bells, the spiritual home of the Bells blend.
Yeah.
But I have never been in there. I did once try to get the attention of the people working the night shift to see if they would let me in and show me around.
They love
Like,
that.
what a jerk. Like, who's
Another
this?
drunk guy, probably a Canadian.
But or like, to be fair, or Northern European. I from what I've understood, Germans and Scandinavians will frequently turn up at distilleries at weird hours, just expecting someone to show them around. So I've been told. Yeah, nice little Blair Athol. I don't know that I would have picked this up as a wine cask. I mean, I think that's a testament to the last two whiskeys in general, is they're well done for the style. I'm not a huge fan of wine casks. I'm still not, but I like these. And what I like about them is that you can't really, it's not blatant. You can't tell that right off the bat, this is a wine cask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. It's pretty expressive. I like where it's falling in this order too. Like it is really volatile, jumping out of the glass for me. I'm getting a lot of nose, and it's like you can feel the breeze coming out. We know the ABV is exactly the same, but it's just so expressive on the nose. And instead of being glommed over by wine caskness, we've picked up a little bit of color, maybe a little bit of white pepper, from either the wine or the French oak. But still very much a Blair Athol, like all the hallmarks that I come to like, little clovey thing going on there.
Yeah, nice finish on it too. Just all around a nice little dram. All right. I don't know if I threw that one in the chat. If I didn't, I will. We're going to move on to Ben Nevis. Or sorry, Benrinnes, not Ben Nevis. The one of the other Bens.
Is it?
It's
Okay.
Benrinnes that we're on to next here.
Oh, I must have got my lineup wrong.
Or is it Miltonduff? Maybe I got the order wrong here.
I don't know. I was.
It's the same
Blair
order.
Athol,
Miltonduff next.
Miltonduff's next.
All right, so we'll swap these around. We'll go to Miltonduff next.
This has a very creamy nose.
Did I do that right? No. Uh-oh. Hoping I didn't get those last two mixed up. I might have just had
You'll
the
be able
bottle
to
set up
tell
wrong.
that Benrinnes is very stinky.
Benrinnes is stinky, is it?
Yeah. At least to me. Well, actually, it's really calmed down.
All right, well, let me pop the Miltonduff up on screen here. Oh, this is the Canasta Sherry one, the Canasta Cream Sherry.
Oh, yeah.
So here we go. Miltonduff, 13-year. Okay, so 13 years of age, Canasta Cream Sherry, 2009 vintage. Another one of those distilleries where we don't see a ton of official bottlings. They did do some official bottlings, but they were kind of dreadful a number of years back.
That was driven by the success of Ballantine's, right? Only the Glenbergie bottling kind of stuck around, but they had the Miltonduff by Ballantine's, the Glenbergie by Ballantine's, and the Glenbergies were really good. The Miltonduffs were not.
All right, I'm trying to do a quality control here to make sure I've got the right one. Yeah, I think I do.
Color looks right.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Miltonduff is a little less dark. Would that be fair to say than the Benrinnes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. We're good. All right, Miltonduff. Yeah, as you said, Lee, one of the three distilleries that are the pillars of the Ballantine's blend. Don't don't see a ton of it outside of independent bottlers, including Gordon MacPhail, which does a lot, has done a lot of Miltonduff over the years. Canasta cream sherry. I mean, we don't see that very often. I mean, I don't even like cream sherry, like that. We're talking like Harvey's Bristol cream, right? Isn't that the?
Yeah, yeah, it's actually a mixture of some over the top, really sweet Oloroso sherry and a little bit of PX that they put together that makes it a cream sherry. I don't see a lot of it. The canasta butt is celebrated and fun to say, but Miltonduff I see fairly regularly with Lang. They've got a good contract. Um, and this is one of the OG distilleries, like 1824. It's been around since Bryce was a cowboy. Um, I think somebody's torturing my dog. It might be one of my children. It's okay.
I'm sure the dog will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miltonduff's soft. It's usually got a nice kind of floral character to it. Um, and yeah, I mean it's it's a release I think that I've seen most of outside of say Old Malt Cask bottlings with Gordon MacPhail. We've seen a lot of it in sherry. So it's a distillery that we don't see a lot of, but I've had some lovely ones from refill casks, especially when they get older. Back in the day, I used to get really excited when we would see, and I know this is going back a long time now, but in the early days of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which has been in Canada for I think 15 years or just about, um, we would get these 28, 29-year-old refill hogshead Miltonduffs that were just stunning, waxy, tropical, very floral. But this drinks really well for a younger Miltonduff. The sherry's a little dumpy, like it's got this kind of thick, almost layered on top profile to it, but it's well done. And Lee, have you ever tried? Because like I'm obsessed about Bristol or cream sherry right now. Did you ever try Harvey's Bristol cream? Like we used to sell it by the caseload when I started, like 21
Mm-hmm.
years ago. We would order in a case of Harvey's Bristol cream every week. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't carried that in a decade.
Most of those people are dead now.
Mhm.
It was very much an old lady, just like Chris said, that plays canasta. It was very much an old lady drink. But I don't know if you ever saw this about 15 years ago. There was an old ALCB catalog that went around from like the 30s. Somebody had, and it
Oh,
was kind of
wow.
shopped around the different wine shops, and
Was someone
it
trying to sell it or they
was.
were just sharing it to show it?
Just sharing it. Hey, look what we found, and then it would like show it to us, and then they would leave. Um, and it was no joke. I would say 60% of the products in there were sherry or some other type of fortified wine.
Right.
And the whole category has just completely waned, particularly cream sherry.
Mhm.
Just, people are more elevated now. It was a fairly simple after dinner conveyance of alcohol. Maybe people were drinking it for the taste, but more for the results.
So I don't know if you have any knowledge or experience in this, but I mean, and I should ask this guy again because I still see him every once in a while. He's retired now, but an old rep that I used to deal with told me that his company used to do a booming business in sherry on the First Nations reserves, and that there was
Mm.
certain tribes that were loyal to specific brands of presumably these sweeter style cream sherries. And yeah, just again, not something that I've had a lot of experience with, but it was something like Beaujolais Nouveau that was big when I started, and then it just died.
I think we've all grown up. I think the market has, the sophistication has, the internet certainly teaching us what is gauche and what is cool. Um, I have heard that about the First Nations that were loyal to
Mhm.
a certain brand. You consider like that might have been traded for, a case of this would have been traded for something of
Right,
import
right.
from the First Nations. I also hear things like something like 20% of Mogan David sales go to new Canadians from Africa.
I don't
because
even
of
know what
the
that
sugar
is.
content. And
What is
Mogan
Logan?
David? Mogan
A kosher
David
wine.
is a kosher wine
Yeah.
that's very
Wow.
sweet. I believe
Yes.
it's made with blackberries.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Uh,
We only see some during the season.
yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, the drinks business is an interesting beast. This Miltonduff, it's not overly complex, but it's lovely. It's got a nice balance to it. And Leah, I don't know if you're out of it, but it looks like I'm nearly out of it. So I might need another, but we'll see what happens.
Got a couple more. I got a couple more. I saw Canasta Butt and I went crazy. No, I've I've got two or three more cases, I think. Because I thought it was one that would perform well.
Well, I mean, Harmony, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Boonahaven release like a 44-year-old Canasta cask that was like obscenely priced?
Yes.
It was like
Yeah.
a $6,000 bottle back when 44-year-old whiskeys weren't $6,000 a bottle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny about this is like if people dug into the sherry, would they be like, oh, that's like a low-end sherry? Is that how people would look at that?
Perhaps. Oh, I mean, if we were judging sherry in their tiers, yes, this is at the bottom.
But
But
still.
only I think because it's cream. And that just I think brings it down just a little bit. Not that the sherry itself was not well made.
And I think knowing what we know about the market today, about the sherry market specifically, that pardon the pun, but the cream has risen to the top. It's only the top producers that are still able to get word out. I think of Emilio Lustau is a fantastic sherry producer. And a lot of the entire industry just exists to season whiskey casks or cask destined for whiskey. So for them to lean into a cream, uh, I think they'll likely do more of it if they can get more of it because the response is pretty good.
All right. What have we got next? We're now finally on to Benrinnes.
Benrinnes.
You say Benrinnes.
Really?
No, I say Benrinnes. I was joking.
Oh.
Well, what's funny about that, Lee, is whenever people get really militant about the pronunciation of something from Scotland, I'm always like, come on. I've been there so many times. It depends on where you are in Scotland. They have like 6 different dialects or more, and if you're on Isla versus Aberdeen, you're going to get a completely different answer. So, but yeah,
Just learn not to argue with anybody.
yeah.
When it
Benrinnes,
comes
as
to
far as I know, is what it is, which is the biggest mountain in the Speyside. There's, I think, 7 distilleries along its flanks, including Benrinnes. This is also, interestingly, a Canasta cream sherry cask. So there you go. Interesting. It's also, Lee, and I don't know if you remember this from back when you gave us a Mortlach wine cask, and I said, I'm never going to bottle a wine cask. I think I also said, I hate Benrinnes. I'm not bottling
You
it.
did. And you bought that same batch. You bought that one.
Yeah, and we bought a cask of Benrinnes as well. So I make outlandish statements, and they usually lead to me eating my words. 19 years, 50% as is tradition, 2003 vintage. And this is another one that we took as a KWM exclusive because we're greedy that way about some things.
Stars in your well. This is also in that 2.5 times distillation era. So like they would have stopped that in 07.
Yeah.
So this gets that added benefit of that fun
And
thing that they were
after that
doing.
is when I find Benrinnes gets extra barnyardy.
It's a good nose.
See here. I'm just trying to find this one to see if I can remember. Is that the one? No. No, here it is. Yeah, so this is one of the ones again we jumped on because I thought it looked interesting. Reviews were half decent. We can't take everything as an exclusive, but we like to have a few things that are. And that's why we picked this one. And it is nosing nicely. Oh, jumping over a little bit there. Darker sherry tones. In fact, this has got to be one of the darker ones in the lineup so far.
It's well placed because it is deep.
Bubblegum, cotton candy, and wet diapers, Harmony? Really?
How many kids have you had, Harmony?
I am the oldest of like 18 cousins.
Oh boy, so you have changed some diapers. All right.
Oh yeah. And I babysat till I was in my 20s.
Till the lawsuit.
No, till I just grew out of doing other people's diapers.
Find the nose on this a little bit muted. There's some fruits and chocolate. Um, it's a little creamy, but it's not really until the palate that this comes out. And then this is that kind of classic sherry profile. But again, like the Miltonduff we just had, it's a little on the dumpy side. Like this is that thick, syrupy profile of sherry.
I like to call it obvious charms.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, yeah, no, yeah. It's like, am I going to get out the microscope and really drill down, or am I going to have a smile on my face as the whiskey goes down?
Mhm. Yeah, it's
There's
very,
the
sorry.
crunchy chocolate bar, I think. It's just like in the blue wrapper and it's flat and it's just got like Rice Krispies or something in it. It kind of reminds me of that, but just like a touch darker and bitter chocolate on the finish.
For me, it's more like a dark goat's milk chocolate, which I know is a very specific reference, but
It
Very.
sure
we
is.
used to do these whiskey and chocolate tastings at the store, and this local chocolate vendor had goat's milk chocolate. Um, and
Tangy.
it was a little gamey. Like, so it was milk chocolate, but there was this kind of gaminess to it. And this reminds me a little bit of that. Also reminds me of like those Maltesers on the
Yeah.
Mm. Or Whoppers.
And Three
Yeah.
Musketeers, those Three Musketeers chocolate bars. I haven't had one of those in a long time because I'm in my mid 40s now and you can't eat.
The specter of diabetes creeping around.
Mhm. But I can remember them.
There's a great rum raisin note on it too, like just really sherry driven.
Mm. Yeah, some nice dark fruits. It's a little syrupy, some nice spice. It drinks really well. I am not normally a Benrinnes guy, but I like this one. So, um, yeah.
Cool.
I've had some Benrinnes that seem needlessly complicated, and I like that this one is kind of dumbed down a little bit. And I don't have to get out the microscope. I can just enjoy it.
Mm. Okay. One to go. And then Lee, I don't know if we mentioned this too. We probably should have mentioned at the start. Once we've gone through the whiskeys, we then go through what we call the speed round. And it's to see how things have changed over the course of the tasting. Now, in theory, this is supposed to be a real quick pass. Sometimes we get stuck in the, but I should have probably warned you that. I don't know if you're finishing them as you go here. And again, no judgment.
I am at home. No, I have been saving a little. I do remember the lightning round at the end.
Oh,
I
very
don't
good.
have that many glasses out, but the ones that I did finish, I know why.
All right. So we're back to a single sherry butt, 12 years. If I were a betting man, I'd say it's probably a refill sherry butt. 2011 vintage, 12 years. Also exclusive to Kensington, but I think because you didn't have so much of it. I believe this was one of the lower
I
out.
got what I could get. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. That was right in line with, hey, can I get some of this? They're like, no, we'll give you five. All right. When it comes to that, it's just like the path of least resistance. Andrew put his hand up. Can I have this as an exclusive? I'm like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I just hand that over instead of trying to shop it around?
Hey,
And
sometimes
no
it's
surprise. I mean, this has got so much going on.
so Will
Mhm.
jumped out with Ovaltine, which is a good one because it does remind me, I don't know why, but at one point in my life, I did try one of those like Nutrisystem shakes just for fun. Someone had one, and it's kind of like a bad chocolate milk is how I would describe it. Like a chocolate milk that you wish you weren't drinking.
I actually I had a throat surgery and I couldn't eat and I had to get calories in, and I had to, drink Ensures and the Ovaltine drinks. And man, I feel terrible for anybody that has to do that. It's like
Oh,
enema solution tastes like. It's so chalky and gross. But the nose is beautiful. This has got like a Wendy's Frosty going on, like a
oh, that's a good one.
hot chocolate mixed with vanilla ice cream.
Or a saddle malt, that
Yes.
vanilla chocolate malt mix. So Travis has got bacon. This is definitely a bacon forward Caol Ila. So good call on that,
Mhm.
Travis. There might
Bacon covered maple donut.
there might be a little bit of seafood in there too. So this is
Mhm.
almost that maple or that sort of bacon wrapped
Scallops.
scallop of
Mhm.
Caol Ila.
Scallops.
Oh, that's nice Caol Ila.
Mm.
Mhm. Oh, that's lovely. This
Some
makes
nice
up for the
spices
last
in
two for
that.
me.
Some nice like German or Dutch licorice, that salted licorice note to it. Some nice spices. Chris saying peanut butter, raspberry jam, and bacon sandwich. That does sound delicious.
That does sound good.
Man, I didn't even know you could mix those things. That sounds amazing.
Mm. Well, Elvis lived off something not far off that, and
I don't know if lived is the right word.
He lived
well,
hard.
he was like a supernova. He burned hot and then he burned out quickly. So
Sure did.
the palate on this is like this is a lovely Caol Ila. Nice like sherry, leather, spice. There's some nice citrus fruit in there as well.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on. It is leaning more bacony, but there's like a little bit of like scallop or lagostine, some kind of little seafood dish in there too. That's a nice Caol Ila.
Yeah, great umami.
Mhm.
Not sure if I put the link.
Travis, I remember that McDavid Tokai, and that was a little weird.
Mm.
But
Chris
this is phenomenal.
can't repeat Chris's tasting note, but will say no one ever got fired for buying Caol Ila. Anyone? It's funny, we've joked about this. I didn't know who first said it. Actually, Kelly Carpenter from the Society was the one who told me, but um, Caol Ila has been described as the most consistently good whiskey in Scotland. I believe it was Dave Broom, the writer, who said that about it. But it's true. I have had very few bad Caol Ilas. Most of those have been wine casks, like dumpy wine casks. And then like if it's a sulfur sherry cask that just was not properly handled, there's not much you can do about that. But uh, part of it, I think, is the fact that they have such a consistent distillate, um, and the fact that you have that peated element in there. I mean, this is something I think people forget about. Is that's another. It's like you're painting a painting and you're adding another color that no one else has, and that peat element, especially in young whiskey, hides flaws in the spirit. It makes young whiskeys more drinkable at an early age. And I think a lot of that plays into it, but there is no denying that Caol Ila is a consistently good whiskey. Um,
I think that we get a good selection too. Their volume, their output is really high, and they're not desperate to sell the stuff. It's rolling into Johnny Black pretty seamlessly. So when there is independence and where we would get most, um, they're cultivated. It is released at the proper time. The distillery offerings for me have been 75-25, good to bad. And like I wonder on a distillery offering, like why isn't this smoky? Why would they do that? That's just weird.
mhm.
Good whiskey, okay whiskey, but I'm looking for smoke. And I think that we get really elevated selections because most of them are coming from IBs.
Yeah. The palette and the finish on this really keeps growing and developing. It's got a really nice, well-rounded profile. I'm gonna have a hard time. Well, I think I know what my number one is, but I'm gonna have a hard time. This is a good lineup. We're gonna need this speed round to go back through it and kind of weed out the chaff, as it were. So going back to that Tomintoul Harmony, Lee, I don't know if you have all these, but you can follow where you do. Um,
Ugh, it's lovely. It's soft. It's fruity. It's just a very, very pretty dream.
say garden center on a hot summer day, like potting soil, it's vegetal, floral,
Mm.
and then you've got those nice sherry tones on top of it.
It picked up a real like seed pod cardamom
Mm,
kind of note too, like almost like a curry element.
mm.
I think it's really cool.
Hey, Inchgower.
I love this.
I did Scour as my last.
Your last in the lineup, like your least favorite.
Least favorite. Nobody believes the guy selling the stuff, but I do have to pick a favorite here and there.
It's
And this one I like. I don't think
yeah.
there's
It's
any
so
dogs in this
different on
pack, but
the
So I'm
finish has changed a lot, I think, or the palette of this has changed a lot.
it's very decent, which I know is damning it a bit with faint praise, but there's some nice fruity tones to it. It's just compared to some of the other things we've had, it's just not insanely exciting.
Yeah.
it gets blown away. It's a tough crowd.
It is a tough crowd.
Yeah.
All right. Speyburn 17. Harmony, do you want to lead us off if you're there? Hmm,
No, you don't want to hear what I have to say.
okay, we'll pass on it.
Yeah, I'll pass.
I
I
like
don't
it.
know.
Very leathery, reminds
is-
me of like fruit roll-ups. Like those caramel candies that come like individually wrapped in paper. There's some nice chocolate tones too. Like just like very basic Verona chocolate. Like nothing added to it, just high cocoa content, basic chocolate.
A little bit of a waxy element to it as well that comes right in with that high cocoa style, like the bonding agent that comes with it for sure. Dusty texture.
Mm-hmm. Bit on the multi side. All right, Harmony, Fettercairn. I know you like the Fettercairn.
Yeah, I still like the Fettercairn. It's like grassy and chocolatey, and I'm getting a lot more like, caramel, apples, and vanilla that are really jumping out.
Really spicy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, the
I
palette
like
is.
that spice factor for sure.
Salty.
I like that spice factor for me after doing a Fettercairn tasting and trying their core range, even though every one of their whiskeys was bottled differently and matured differently. Um, that spicy note is part of its DNA for me. So it's nice to still be able to pick it up.
Yeah, it does well for, again, a wine cask. Was not expecting it. Blair Athol, still in wine country. This does have a little hint of that STR, but not like as aggressive as some of those STR wine casks.
Very orangey now that it's opened up. Really, really marmalade-y.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got a nice creamy undertone to it. There's something that's making me think of like lobster rolls. Like it's got this fatty, oily
That buttery.
seafood note to it.
No joke. I had a homemade lobster roll for lunch.
Oh, nice.
My wife's allergic to lobster, and she wasn't around, and I found this little lobster tail at co-op. So I made myself a lobster broil sandwich.
My mom grew up in Nova Scotia and was afraid to take a lobster sandwich to school because she thought that her school friends would think she was poor. So,
Hilarious.
true story.
Bugs of the sea.
Yeah, Miltonduff.
This is a guilty pleasure, this Miltonduff. I'm not afraid to say it's number 3 in my lineup. It's pretty crushable whiskey.
Yeah,
It's got a lot of like burnt Tootsie Rolls and like Australian licorice, like that salty stuff that Sammy brings in sometimes.
I
Aussie licorice is an acquired taste. I have acquired it, but
don't
yes,
like
I
this
love it.
at all.
I mean the Aussie stuff is fine. It's the German and the Dutch stuff that gets pretty wild.
Everything just tastes burnt.
Licorice you need a safe word for?
Yeah,
Yeah,
either
exactly.
that or you need like the mask and all those other things that come with it. It's far from the most complex whiskey in the lineup, but it's very drinkable. It's a nice whiskey. I like it. To be fair, there's not really anything in the lineup tonight that I've personally disliked, which is unusual. On to the Benrinnes.
Great note on the cherry cola, Tom. That you're absolutely right. That's cool.
I really like the palate on that. Nice sherry, chocolate tones,
Yeah.
dried fruits, a little bit meaty, orange rind. Harmony, Travis is suggesting that you have a lot of facial tells.
Oh yeah. I've been
Yeah.
told that many times in my life, my face doesn't lie.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I'm just not always a fan of sharing matured things.
No, and that I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of over that, like within
Yeah.
reason, like over the
Yeah.
top cherry. I like things that are a bit more subtle, but that's like me. So with my ADD, I find some textures problematic.
Hmm.
And so like I consume all my fruit, most
I
of
don't
it.
know if that's ADD. I think that's more spectrum, but you
Well, it
go
could
for
be
it.
early. I'm on whatever. I'm on some version of a spectrum, but I consume all my fruit in these dehydrated fruit bars because it's for me, it's not the flavor I don't like, it's the texture and the popping. And I don't love stuff like that. And my daughter, she has the same issue. And my wife can always tell when I'm eating something because like my face makes an expression and I'm not conscious of it because I'm not watching myself, but
Right.
it
You mean
happens.
you don't eat in front of a mirror? Why
I
not?
don't, I don't as a
So
matter of fact.
weird.
So and I always think I'm like, no one could tell that I'm struggling to eat this, but
She can always tell.
Keep it together. Keep it together.
Smoke coming out of his ears.
that's right. All right, on to the Caol Ila.
Yep, this is great.
I would say I'm going back to that, but to be honest, I never stopped drinking it. I was faking it the whole time and just been continually drinking this. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And
That's a
Oh yeah,
stand.
that's beautiful. This is why we love Caol Ila.
All right,
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to trigger the poll. Now, Lee, because you're a co-host, I can take away that permission if you want to vote. You do not actually get a vote in this, but we always do. We'll go through it verbally, and then Evan always asks a cheeky third question.
He's
And
learned how to add photos to it.
yeah, are you an optimist or a pessimist? And
Hilarious.
it's literally a glass is half full or a glass is half empty question. But I'll let
It's
you
like full
discover
of water or half full of alcohol.
that. So while people are answering their questions, Harmony, I'm going to start with you and then I'll go to Lee. Harmony, you can pick three. What are your three favorites tonight?
Caol Ila is my first. The Fettercairn is my second. And I'm gonna go with the Tomintoul for my third, I think. I mean, it could be second, it could be third. And I'm surprised because I thought the Inchgower was gonna win, but it changed over the hour in the glass for me, and I'm not sure
Hmm.
um, if it's in my top three anymore. So Caol
Okay.
Ila, Fettercairn, Tomintoul.
All right, Lee,
Yeah.
you're up. Top three.
I'm Caol Ila. I mean, no surprise there. The Tomintoul also that would be my number two. And this just kind of leapfrogged at the end for me when we retasted. I really like this Speyburn. I think it's got a lot going on that
Cool.
maybe wasn't as evident when it first popped out of the glass.
Yeah. I'm just going through one last tasting here. Like you two, I had it narrowed down to two very definitive ones. And I'm going to be beating a little bit from the same drum here. But I'm going to go Caol Ila, Tomintoul, Speyburn. Those are my favorites in the lineup tonight. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we're the same.
All right, let's see how the poll's doing. Looks like everybody who can answer has answered, so I'll share the results here. So for top whiskey tonight, it is a tie. The Tomintoul and the Caol Ila tied for first. The Benrinnes comes in second. And then when we switch, well, I mean third, but you know, there's a tie. When we go to second favorite, it is a lot more democratic. Inchgower, Fettercairn, Benrinnes, and Caol Ila all get the same number of votes.
Cool.
The only whiskey that didn't get any love today was the Blair Athol. Interesting.
Or Miltonduff.
Interesting.
Needs to vote. And are you an optimist or a pessimist? Optimist, I see Old Malt Cask bottlings as being half full of alcohol. Pessimist, I see Old Malt Cask bottlings as being half full of water.
That is genius. Please thank Evan for that. That is so great.
It's genius, but then, and I know he will see this because he watches and then posts the tastings onto YouTube. It does beg the question, how much time was spent thinking up that question? And was
Probably
that
not a lot. He's
Oh, you're right.
extremely witty.
To be fair, you're right. It was probably not a lot of time. He is good at that sort of thing. Take it for
Very
granted.
quick on his feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clever fellow. So awesome range tonight, guys. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you for joining us as co-host tonight. Thank you to everybody who took part in the tasting. I hope you enjoyed it. For those who are watching it later, because you missed it, I hope you enjoy it when you do get around to
Thanks,
watching it. Happy New Year, everyone. Look forward to seeing you at a future tasting. If you're going to do dry January, considering making it dry-ish as opposed
Yeah.
to completely bone dry.
Yeah.
But,
And if you're not, join us tomorrow for the society outturn.
yeah, Harmony and Evan are
That'd be
doing
great.
this all over again tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a good
Have a
day.
good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Lee.
everybody. Much appreciated. Thanks, Harmony. Thanks, Andrew. Talk